Right now on Close Up with The Hollywood Reporter.
I mean, there's a giant monster right behind you that's chasing you, and you just have to run as fast as you can and really try not to die.
One of the little tricks that I use, always go, well, culturally speaking, and they really don't want to argue.
We'll hear from the showrunners behind the year's best comedies. Jill Soloway, Transparent. Steve Levitan, Modern Family. Alec Berg, Silicon Valley. Kenya Barris, Blackish. Duplass, Togetherness. Robert Carlock, Unbreakable, Kimmy Schmidt. Welcome to Close Up with The Hollywood Reporter. I'm Stacey Wilson, awards editor and your host. This is my co-host, Lacey Rose, television editor and expert on all things TV.
Thanks for having me.
I'd also like to introduce Alec Berg, Steve Levitan, Jill Soloway, Kenya Barris, Duplass, and Robert Carlock. Thank you all for being here. Let's get started.
You guys have shows that have struck a chord. I mean, there are for specific audiences that you're speaking to while also speaking to broader audiences. Why do you think these shows have hit so and resonated so profoundly?
Yeah, it's interesting. I just got the demographic breakdown of our show, and it's not as many Black people as I thought watching it. Like, we have a slightly higher demographic than Modern Family, which comes on before us. But I think the thing is that, in a crazy sort of way, we made America say, like, oh, they're kind of like us, and that was what, in a lot of ways Modern Family did, and we were lucky enough to come on after that show. Really, it was what Jill said, what everyone was saying, is taking from our families and, like, really using an aggregate of a really eclectic group of, culturally, from women to men, group of people, and taking their stories and saying, how can we tell the most honest version of this in a way that hasn't quite been done before?
What's that?
Oh, the mouthwash? It's oral hygiene, fresh breath. You ever seen this stuff before?
No, I meant the pregnancy test.
Oh, the pregnancy test. My symptoms are all over the place, so I just want to rule it out. Yeah, I know, it's silly, right?
Yeah, so silly.
Yeah.
I read someplace that sometimes vasectomies, they don't take.
God, not Pam's. Pam is known for the fascial interposition and cautery. Yeah, it's the whole snip and burn.
Correct me if this is not how you think of your shows, but it ends up being a prism for other people to look
Absolutely.
at their families. I mean, as specific
Just make
as
sure
your
you
premise
say
is.
that it's prism, because I've said prism in interviews before, and it always gets printed as prison. He said prism.
So you're in this jail. I said prison. And maybe you don't think of your show that way, but it is as specific as the premise is. It's about a family at the end of the day, and I think it doesn't work if people don't see that larger.
I'm curious, Jay, a show like yours is a good example. What is it about half-hour, dramedies is how we're characterizing a lot of these shows, that has the advantage of dealing with issues of race and politics and sexuality and issues that we aren't necessarily seeing all the time in dramas, really? What is the benefit of these shows of comedy now that's actually able to address these in a way that's relatable?
I don't know. I mean, it's weird. I come at it from such a microcosmic approach. Like, we write scripts and they turn out to be 36 pages and they get edited to 28 pages and we try to change it and we can't do it. We're just tackling the material that we want to tackle. But when I look up into the world and out of my little lens, I'm just happy that people seem to be more open and excited about drama and comedy being completely blended. And I just feel a lot of our shows are doing this. Like, sadness is totally tied to comedy, and everything political is actually, it's all infused. And I don't know, there's something really exciting to me about everything that's happening with TV right now. So I don't know, comedy seems to be a fun way to explore the deeper issues. I love TV, and whenever I interview writers and I really don't watch TV, I'm like, go fuck yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, you think you're higher than me? Because I grew up watching TV, I love TV now, and I feel like TV's in a really great place. And you can look at all you guys' shows and just see what's happening, and to me, it's the purest form of art right now. It's going back to almost how magazine articles used to be. Like, you could just hear voices. You hear voices on television shows. Now you see the actual voices of the writers coming out on screen, and I think it's a really good time, especially in comedy.
I think that's right. I mean, it has the idea that the freedom of comedy and the ability to let an audience laugh and perhaps breathe a little bit in these shows allow you to tackle certain topics that perhaps you wouldn't in the prism of drama.
Yeah, I mean, I think the trans thing in an hour show could so easily get so heavy, and I think Tambor's brilliant, but for us to sort of let the transness be over here and let the comedy be at the center, I think that's kind of the message, which is like, yeah, transness is part of the background. Yeah, it is just a quality of a person, and the comedy is about the family. And yeah, I mean, it's weird, the whole idea of the binary, that Transparent challenges the binary, but I really think that a half hour is a comedy and an hour is a drama is also a binary that we're used to. And it seems like in the next few years that people are going to have to sort of split up those, maybe new names.
The Emmys tried to figure it out this year,
I know,
right?
but then people...
Arbitrary, yeah.
Yeah, and then so some 1 hours ended up getting, like they appealed and they became comedies, and then others didn't, and it just...
It's really strange because, I mean, it's unfortunate that, that we're put in a position to compete. Let's just say that, because otherwise, who would care what it is? That's the only time it actually
As long as we all got rich, who would
right?
Didn't eat out of our
Didn't have to eat
cabinets.
cabinet.
But it's a very strange thing because you're approaching, we'll approach a subject very differently than, even shows like yours, where I think, at least, forgive me if I'm wrong here, but we'll tackle. We always start with, "Oh, how is that funny? How is it funny? How's it funny?" And and I think that at the same time we're asking, how is this real, and what's real about this, and what's the truth here, and all that. We're absolutely doing that, but if it just doesn't feel like we can, get some good comedy out of it, we'll go, this is just getting dark and serious, and let's let it go for now until we come up with a funny take on it. And it's tricky because you're then put into these competitions where you're then competing against a show that might approach it very differently. And it doesn't make one better or worse than the other. It just means it's completely, utterly different in tone.
Statistically, yours always seem to be better.
So I'm happy with the system. What I'm saying is don't mess with the system.
This competition is
Steve,
silly.
it's like things are working fine.
I don't see what the problem
What am I going to do with this mountain of Emmys?
You're looking at a Freeling cloud gazer with aftermarket frequency scrambler, untraceable. As you can guess, I'm a droner myself.
Yes, you're droning right now. Oh, he's getting closer! Mom, maybe you should cover up.
No, that's crazy. We can just knock it out of the sky. Manny, grab the hose.
I'll use this to blind it.
My eyes!
My eyes!
One thing also with the 30-minute form that you were asking about, it almost stumps me a little bit because, and Jill and I talk about this a lot, where we don't even really regard the 30-minute form in what we're creating. I mean, it's just a giant long-form story, sort of, that we're telling. Yeah, that's sort of broken up. And there's nice, I don't know what it is about this, the nice little hill of that 30 minutes. It seems to, fit. It weirdly falls off the truck well in that way. But there is something really amazing about this new form of storytelling where we're not doing episodic TV and we're not doing movie stuff. We're just kind of we're just going forward, and the collective conscious of the show is being shared by all these people. For me in particular, what it definitely helps with is not so much a political thing, but just the subtlety of what can be conveyed when you have this massive knowledge of these characters. Because my brother and I have always been trying to get to a truthfulness and the simplicity about our storytelling that is really analogous to life, how things happen in real life. When you have a breakup, it's usually not down by the river, well lit, and it's like you're picking out dental floss at Rite Aid, and you now know that this is the beginning of the end of your relationship. It's very unceremonial the way it happens, and to have an audience key into that and know that this is happening right now on this shitty aisle 12 of Rite Aid is so, I don't know what it is, it's very exciting to us.
What are you fiddling with under the covers? What are you squirming and you're playing with your boobs? I'm just... Clothespins? Why do you have clothespins on your boobs?
I don't know.
You know what? I've been depriving myself of the internet in hopes that we can make love at some point.
Come on,
and
you've not been depriving yourself of the internet. The cache is always clear.
It's interesting because I'm such a fan of all these guys, and the one thing that I got and I learned is that it's character. You could put Larry David in any situation, and you know how he's gonna react. You can kind of it kind of builds from there. So when you have strong characters, and you kind of know what those characters are, and the writers room knows who they are, you can sort of build a lot from that. And I'm such a fan of comedy. I'm such a fan of, like, you know, every week on Modern, I'll look and we'll come back in and say, into this, what are we, guys, 5th or 6th season?
We just finished our 6th.
And that far into it, you know, the stories, you know, you're just like, they're still doing stories, but the jokes, I think that I'm still at my core. It is harder when you're at the table, you're not able, in the head of the table, can't pitch as much, but I still appreciate, you know, you guys had she didn't get in stupid Harvard. Oh, she didn't get in Princeton? And I was like, it was a really smart, you know, joke or whatever. And those are the things that sort of keep me going. Because, you know, in a comedy room, there's a sort of competition amongst us because we all sort of want to be funny, we all want to get on the page. I think that is something that keeps me going to work every day.
Yeah.
You know, is knowing there's going to be a great joke, you know, or maybe a few, if you're lucky.
At the risk of getting a little bit bleak, what were the sort of low points, the points that at which you may have even said, I don't know if I can do this, I don't know if I want to do this, and how did you turn it around?
We were just talking about how the subject of this, it should be called the inhumanity. Because we're all talking about how we feel like we're like right on this edge where you almost want them to cancel the show because it's so hard and you're barely surviving it and you're barely getting through it and you're using every fiber of your being just to be there. So I don't know about for you guys, but I just feel like the word trauma comes to mind. Like, I'm in trauma at all times, and it's good in a lot of ways because it brings all of your top stuff to your forefront. Like all your deepest fears are coming up and you're putting them into the characters. Literally in the moment on set, you'll just be like, oh, this is really about this thing that I'm so scared of. The hackles are coming up and you're like, oh God. So I feel like it's always the lowest point, highest point at the same time.
Your lowest point.
We're living the lowest point, highest point right now.
When I worked with Larry David on Curb, he wouldn't call HBO and say he was willing to do a season until he had most of the season written already. So functionally, we were writing a hit show on spec because he didn't want to put a deal in place because he had such searing memories of those days back at Seinfeld where they would call and go, congratulations, you're doing it again. And he would look at an empty board with 22 empty slots on it and he would break down.
He had to get ahead of that.
Yeah, and he just never wanted to be in that situation where he owed this mass of information that he didn't have.
What's that thing that they say after pilot season? The winners, those who got picked up, the winners, get to embark on the toughest journey of their lives, work incredible hours, not sleep, not eat well, you know, age too quickly, and the losers get to go to Hawaii.
So you have your summer. You have your summer back.
So, I had a crazy moment, and Steve was part of it, actually, and he was very gracious. Up front, I had gotten picked up, never had a show before, and unbelievably inebriated. And I'm sitting on a bankhead at it's the weirdest club ever. I walk in with agents, and it's like trap rap music playing, and it's all these white agents. I'm like, where are we? How's this happening? And Steve is there, and I'm like, I'm super drunk, and he was so gracious.
Shocking. Wait, let's picture that for a minute. Okay.
And I'm super drunk, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm such a fan. I'm like, he's like, dude, it's gonna happen, so just go with it. And it was like, he said it in a way to just say like, it's just happening, and you know, and you're gonna do what you're gonna do. And it was such a gracious moment because it stuck with me even after I woke up with a hangover the next day. It was like, this is real, and it's gonna happen, and you just have to make sure there's a lot of people working for you who their livings are dependent upon what you do. And if you fail, you'll get another chance, but make the best of this. And that was, you know, something that really stuck with me.
Sure.
I was completely drunk and remember none of it.
That wasn't you, actually.
Jill, was there a low point?
Yeah, well, you know, that for that sort of like first showrunner job, I kept sort of hitting my head against the ceiling where it became like, okay, you know, you like sort of rub the genie and you say, if I could have anything, what would it be to be a showrunner? Oh, sorry, like, can I have you back, Genie? Actually, to be a showrunner of a show that I created, because then you can't really be, you know, used in that political way. That there's a sort of triangle that happens if you didn't create the show with the producer and the director and the writer. And I really wanted to create my own show and just felt like I couldn't get a show made, and had a pilot pass on and another pilot passed on, and was sort of like kind of out of money. And just eating what was in the cabinets, basically, which I know lots of regular Americans do.
Not
So for me,
What is this regular American?
it's in the cabinet just to
What is
stay there.
cabinet?
But actually, for me, it was seeing girls get picked up and seeing tiny furniture and going, all right, who the heck is Lena Dunham? Where did she come from on my watch? Everybody was saying to me, like, have you seen this girl? She's just like you. And I was like, ugh.
And you're like, I've been me for a long time.
Yes, younger and much more successful, and she's living her vision, and you're not, is what I heard. So,
Awesome cabinets everywhere.
exactly. So I decided to make a film. I decided to make a movie so that I would be able to have that sort of calling card about what my voice was, and it helped.
It helps you get the actors you wanted for your show, too.
Yeah, I mean, one great thing was making the movie. Another great thing was my parent coming out as trans. That helped. The two things together, I had made the movie, and then I felt that I was ready to walk into a network and say, I know what the tone should be. I know how to actually edit now, and now I know what cinematographer I want. I know how to cast. And then, yeah, at the same time, my parent came out, and pretty shortly after that phone call, I was like, I think I got a show.
I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry. I'm just trying. Can you just help me out here? Are you saying that you're going to start dressing up like a lady all the time?
Honey, all my life, my whole life, I've been dressing up like a man. This is me.
And in the moments in between the low points, when you're looking for jobs, is there something that you did that was daring or crazy to land a writing job that you really wanted?
You kind of don't want to do anything crazy to land a writing job. You almost want to go on an interview and be the least interesting person.
I mean, the interviews you have with writers are mainly, from my experience, to make sure they're not crazy.
Yeah.
And it is kind of amazing how people can blow it.
Yeah.
And reveal that they're crazy.
Yeah.
And you just know you don't want to be in a room for 20 hours with that person. So I think to get anywhere, you have to.
But what did you do early on to get your work noticed? Because that's always, those first few years are the toughest.
Yeah.
When I moved to LA, I was working with my then partner, Jeff Schaefer, and we moved to LA and we just called everyone we could call. We were sensitive not to put too many scripts in too many people's hands and say, can I have 7 hours of your time? It was just, do you have 10 minutes? Tell me how you did it. And we just spoke to anyone who would spend any amount of time with us. And eventually that led from one person to another person to another person to another person. And we were lucky enough to get to pitch ideas to somebody who had a show on the air. And then that show went under, but they ended up working at Seinfeld and we submitted ideas to them. And I remember the actual day we got that job, we were just sitting at home and the phone rang. And our friends called us and said, hey, how long would it take you to get over to CBS Radford? We were like, well, why? They said, well, Larry and Jerry want to meet you. And 45 minutes, I'm standing there in my underwear. And 45 minutes later, we're sitting with Larry and Jerry, and 20 minutes later,
Never
we got a
happened
job.
today. Never.
And that's just the way it happened. And there was no time to get nervous. There was no time to like, okay, you say this, and then I'll say this, and then we'll do that clever thing. It just was like, and we just went in and.
And that first job is so important because you start realizing that every job you have, it's really starts becoming about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting certain people's crew, and so you're in that room and you start saying like, this dude's never going to work again. Like he does not understand that this is
Does
about.
someone pull someone aside at that point and say, just so you know?
Sometimes they do.
Yeah.
Sometimes
But
they
the boss needs the people under it.
That's true.
But it's a strange thing because it's easy to say to somebody, hey, we need you to talk a little bit more or whatever. That's something that somebody can work on.
Right.
It's when you're saying to somebody something that they can't work on.
Don't be an asshole.
Like
You know the essence of who you are. Change that. Don't be that.
Your personality annoys me. It's
And you
rough.
only know that until, the 2 a.m., 16-hour marathons.
Sometimes you know.
Sometimes day one.
Even after the meeting. No, it's as managers, it's a really hard thing because I think we're paid to be empathetic and we put ourselves in those people's shoes. They have the same dream that we have, and I always feel like, if I say the wrong thing, I take someone aside and, hey, do you feel like you're being heard? And we'd love to hear from you more. You were so funny in the interview. And you're kind of talking in a code because I'm afraid to just say, do you think it's working? Do you think your voice is fitting this? Do you think you're
How many times
gelling?
has that conversation actually worked? Have you actually took someone aside and said, I need you to be better, and they actually got better?
I feel like I'm better. I feel like I
So you
came
heard
up-
what I was saying?
I think I came
Because I
up
was
like
being
10%.
very
I'm
coded.
pretty sure.
It's hard. That's a good question. I can think of people whom I had that conversation with, and I thought, boy, I'm gonna have to fire this person. And by the end of the season, they were valuable. I don't know that the conversation had anything to do with it, and more that they found their
their lane.
rhythm.
Or the fear
but
of
I also feel
unemployment.
afterwards, if I'm firing someone, I don't want to not have.
You
tried
feel like
to
you have
give
to
those-
give a warning shot.
And sometimes, like, is this just too oblique? Am I not? Is it not coming through?
It's a very strange thing because I've seen this a lot where people will say, don't say it to him because you're just going to freak
You
him
can
out
make it
more.
worse.
and then I say, but I don't want to be sitting here in March and saying, hey, we're not bringing you back because you didn't talk more. And they're like, well, I just wish I had known that because I was trying to be respectful and I was. And so I will err on the side now of look, it's not quite happening yet, but I believe in you. I know it's there. I've read it. I've seen glimpses of it. We just need to see more of it. Or, one thing I'll say is I need a higher batting average from you, which is I don't want you to just talk more to talk more. I want to see more of the things you say get into scripts. And that's just a specific thing to work on, that if you feel like you're talking and things aren't getting in, I mean, ask yourself at the end of the day, did I get things in?
Yeah.
Go home and because I'll often wonder, like, does that person go home and say, boy, I had another great day sitting around the table?
They don't. They know.
They know.
You know.
I hope so.
I also feel like there are some like very basic, points of etiquette in a room, like people saying, I don't like that joke.
I hate
That's
that.
pointless, and that's something that I guess a lot of people think they're helping by pointing out the bad things.
There's always the my only thing guy in the room. Like you have the scene all done, and then you're like, my only thing.
Problem
Like, you don't wanna
identifier
be-
is a great job.
Yeah.
To have,
You don't want to be the my only thing guy.
Yeah, but that's something that I think, you're perfectly within your rights to just go, look, you're saying a lot of this doesn't work for me, but not a lot of here's a thing that would work better.
Or
and that's
the-
just not helpful.
Or the sort of the person who repeats what has been
Somebody else's
said,
joke.
reiterated.
Louder.
The repitcher.
Yeah,
The
and-
logic police.
Then there's
There's
people who
always
don't
the-
laugh at everything I say. I hate that.
It's awful.
It's not why I
Laughing is
hired you.
important, though. That's actually,
Laughing is
I
important.
notice when people don't laugh, and I always like to make sure that people are generous with each other. You have to be willing to laugh at each other's jokes.
Yeah, the culture of a writing room is so different from anything else. I mean,
It
even when
is.
you were describing the firing of a person, it's a breakup. That's what we're talking about, because we are talking about the inner being of people, welcoming them in, enjoying their humanity, coaxing it, like we were talking about, out of them, like saying, be open, be free, this is a safe place. Never mind.
Yeah.
We don't like what you have. It's just a crushing blow.
It's very like group therapy too.
It is.
The writer's room is, sometimes we call it the day room when there's like food everywhere. It's like the day room at the institution where you're sitting around kind of being your loosest, least boundaried, best, craziest, funniest self. So it is really vulnerable, and it is
personal.
And it's a team too. It's a very meaning that everybody does different things, and sometime during the season you're like this guy's not doing. Then a draft come in, you're like, oh my God, he's a draft writer, or this person doesn't talk as much, but they have great story pitches when they do. Or some person, people just everything they say is super funny, but none of it ever goes in the script, and you know that you kind of need that person just to keep the levity of the room. I think that's a really big part of a room is it's almost fantasy basketball. You're given a certain amount of money, and you have to hire a rebounder, and you have to hire someone who hits threes, and you have to do this, and you have to
absolutely.
put this together with a certain amount of a budget.
And sometimes this happens occasionally, for sure, that you'll let somebody go because they just didn't click in your room, and they will do well somewhere else. Now, it could be because they came away from that experience and they took something from it, or it's just that for example, like our room has a lot of chiefs. We have a lot of people that are at the upper level, and what we don't need is somebody else sort of, looking at it from above. What we need people are just, throwing ideas in and bringing lots to it. So that person then could go to a show that needs leadership, and suddenly becomes very valuable, and that empowers them and gives them confidence, and suddenly they're pitching with new vigor. And
how important do you think new voices are for you every year? Like, do you like to bring someone at least?
Yeah, we love to. We haven't always, but we're trying to always, like all you guys, we're trying to take stories from our lives as much as possible. So we've run out. But hopefully our families are generating new ones, because otherwise why have them? But we're looking for people with new stories and new family dynamics all the time. And
I always like to hire at least one person who's just gotten to town, just because it keeps everybody young, to hear their stories about,
oh, that's good,
parking.
Yeah.
Like they get a ticket, they get their, they get a boot on the car, like they don't know where to live, like they've got the chaos of just having moved to LA, and it's fun to watch.
So we'd like to know, was there a moment in your long, illustrious careers as writer, producers, where you felt totally in over your head? And how did you overcome that feeling?
When do we not
right
feel
now?
I don't recall a day ever where at some point I wasn't desperately terrified that somebody was going to call somebody and come and take away my job, and the fraud would be revealed and it was all going to be over.
And how heightened were those feelings when you took over Seinfeld?
That was just being thrown into the deep end. I was there for 4 years. The first 2 years, Larry David was there. Larry was the hub of the wheel. Everything went through him, writing-wise. I mean, Jerry did an amazing job, but Jerry was on the stage. Jerry was out promoting. Larry was really the head writer of that show. And then he left. And we kind of had there was no plan. We just sort of went, okay, well, we'll just keep doing what we were doing, but the wheel will just keep turning, but there's no hub. So we just had to kind of figure it out.
One way or another, isn't that how it always happens? I mean, it's not like you pass the showrunner bar and suddenly you're a showrunner. You get thrown into it. And yeah, I don't know how I got to run 30 Rock. I think Tina insisted, but I didn't have experience doing that. On the next day, you're in charge of a room and you're in charge of a budget. And
how do you prepare for that stress? How do you not let them see you sweat, as it were?
I don't know that you can. I think you just have to, there's a giant monster right behind you that's chasing you, and you just have to run as fast as you can and really try not to die.
Because nobody knows what it is. I think that's another thing too, is like show running is different in every scenario. Even when my brother and I came into our HBO show, someone asked us who's the showrunner. I was like, I don't know. And then someone next to me said, you are. and Mark went, we're the showrunners. We are the showrunners.
I got partnered with a guy when I did my show, Larry Wilmore, who told me, I was like, well, it's my show. They're not going to fire you. He was like, no, they will fire you.
Yeah.
I was like, trust me.
From experience.
He was like, trust me.
It's now their show.
At some point on my first show that I was a showrunner on was United States of Terror, and I really wanted to be a showrunner. I was like, I got my patch, I got my cap, and it's different when you create your own show and you're the showrunner, and you're a showrunner on somebody else's show. And one of the things that I noticed, I've heard that people get thrown under the bus. I realized that the bus runs on people underneath it. The bus won't go unless there are people under it screaming. It's the gas. And so you're always trying to make sure that you're not the person who's under the bus. And if you're not throwing somebody under the bus, you probably are under the bus. But Craig Zisk was my sort of producer-director, and he said something to me that, early on, which is people just want to feel like they're being heard. So even though I had no idea what was going on, I would just practice listening and smiling and acting like I heard people and okay. And then, if you have conflict, if you want to figure it out, if you think they're dead wrong, you do that elsewhere, you do that in private. But it is a political job. It's like captaining a ship.
The collaboration piece is a huge piece of that, and that can be challenging. When you sort of talk about somebody else coming in, he didn't stay that long, but being part of your vision, how do you sort of figure out how to tackle that kind of challenge, that sort of piece of collaboration?
Well, when I worked on 6 Feet Under, Alan Ball actually was led by example, and it was a room much like this and a table much like this, and he really acted as though the Fisher family lived in the center of the table. The Fishers didn't live in his heart or in his brain, and so we all kind of gathered together to listen to the Fishers. And I do the same thing on Transparent, where I let everybody know. So funny to see Jay here. Hi. I'm not lying, am I? No. He plays a character on the show. And we try to salute and listen to and respect the Pfefferman family. And I'm always helping people to listen rather than attempting to get my way, because you can never win.
And a big part of the collaboration is not just with the writers, though. As a showrunner, you have to collaborate with every department, and you're often talking about stuff you don't know anything about. I mean, you could try to know a tenth of what those people do, but that's a big part of it, is getting what you want through a mechanism that you'll never fully understand. I mean, imagine trying to go light a scene. It would be terrible. But you've got to try to understand what that person's needs are and make it work for you. And that puts you often in the role of being the person coming into the writer's room giving bad news. This can't happen, or he won't say this, or we don't have this actor, which is always fun.
You're also always in a weird position where there is always somebody who is better at everything than you are. Like, you're never the best at anything. There's always one person in the process somewhere who's better at it than you are.
It's a very strange transition also when you're used to being the guy in the room, or one of the guys in the room, just pitching and trying to solve that problem or whatever. And then it goes, you have to turn on a completely different part of your brain where you now have to think about it and, of course, second guess yourself and wonder if you're right and does everybody think I'm an idiot? And then at the same time, hear what everybody's saying, because ultimately you have to stop and go, okay, oh, that's it, that's great, let's do that, and let's move forward. And if you're too much in your own head thinking about solving this problem, you can often miss a really good pitch that would have solved that problem. So it's a very strange dynamic that suddenly changes the minute you become in charge. You can't believe there's just a time when you utterly can't believe that what I say goes. Like, it's so shocking to you, and it's at first it's terrifying.
Yeah.
It really is.
They build the thing you tell them to build.
Yeah. I mean, I remember many cases like that, like, wow, this was just a little idea in our heads 3 days ago, and suddenly, people are working all night to build something for you. But that's a very strange feeling.
How long does it take you to get into that groove of like, okay, I am in charge, if this is working?
Well, I mean, I think in the beginning you just have to fake it. And if you just fake it, okay, and look confident. And frankly, I think that for the most part, when I've talked to other writers who have dealt with what they consider to be frustrating showrunners, the number one complaint might be they're indecisive. And we're sitting there, and it's 11 at night, and he can't decide between and the. And I took that to heart, and I just try to say, you know what, this may not be right, but
people just want direction.
This is a decision, and I got to pick a way. This one feels better to me, so let's go on this road. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
I learned more from all the showrunners who did bad things than I did from the good ones, because you knew that they were the reason the show wasn't working. I mean, sometimes a show is just not going to work. But in general, when the room sucks, half the time it's because of the showrunner, and he kind of sets the tone, like the coach sets the tone for what kind of team it's going to be. So you really want to come in there, and people have personal things going on, and people have whatever. You want to come in there and make sure everyone feels comfortable, especially when you're doing jokes and comedy, to feel comfortable to say what they're going to say and feel like they're heard. And especially on my show, everything is sort of we want to make it an aggregate of everyone's sort of family situations. People have to feel comfortable to sort of say whatever they feel and not feel like you're going to be a dick because you're having a bad day or something like that. So that was one of the big things I learned.
So if we had populated this table with your writers, how would they describe you guys and your sort of management or show running style?
That's a hard question to answer. That I'm much taller in person. I don't know. I'm a believer in you don't know where that good idea is going to come from. Your job is to, and it depends on the day what your job is really, but your job is to provide some kind of framework. But I'm a believer in tangents and having fun in the room. I think Jill was saying earlier, it has to be fun. You spend too much time with these people. And the point is to write a comedy, ultimately. Good things come from things that seem unrelated. Good things come from bad ideas. Good things come from room bits. Not always. Sometimes you have to stop them firmly. But so I hope that, the only goal is for it to be a free environment for people to share their lives, their ideas, their jokes. Just pitching a joke is taking a risk.
Yep.
So how do you work with your actors on your show? How much, for example, and Kimmy Schmidt, who seems to be perfectly embodied by Ellie Kemper. It's as if she were born to play this character. How much input did she have in the creation of what we ended up
reverse
seeing?
engineered it from her, really. Her name was floated to us as someone to develop for, and it was the first name that kind of popped for us. That happens a lot when you're between things. People are pushing names, and we met with her, and she just confirmed our sense of who we thought she was on screen. And that's a rare thing to be able to communicate, I think, and to have any intelligence behind it, and she has a lot. As showrunners, we're producers, we have to interact with everything, and that have to is the wrong way to put it. great to be able to put your finger in every pie, even the ones you don't deserve to have any opinion about. So we work very closely with our actors, and Ellie was on board immediately, and she's just game. But we're always, or some close representative of us is always on the floor. Someone who knows the script and knows our intention, and their job is to make sure the directors and the actors understand what we're trying to say, and often that's us. So we work very closely with the actors. And of course, we want them to bring their point of view as well, but at a certain point.
So what do you want to do tonight?
Honestly, listen to Diana Ross albums alone while I do my stretches to alleviate my gas.
We should go out to celebrate. I mean, I got a job today. I got an apartment. I met you.
I envy you. I've never been able to meet me.
Come on. We should go dancing someplace cool like Club Bombay from Moesha.
Things are behind it, Indiana.
I feel the same way, like reverse engineering. It's so interesting, even though I felt like it was my story. And I recently had a conversation actually with Larry Wilmore, and we were saying as much as we think as writers, we do an amazing job, but I've seen amazing scripts fall into the hands of the wrong actors and they die. And I've seen shitty scripts fall in the hands of great actors and they so I think that actors are like magic people, and the great ones, Lawrence Fishburne really had never done comedy before. Very unique guy, gets in there and I call him the night before and I'm like, Fish, we haven't really,
And he said, don't call me that.
It's awkward.
My name's Lawrence, so it's Fishburne.
But I was like, do you know how you're gonna play this character? He's like, nope, it'll come to me tomorrow. And I was like, okay. But it's very interesting, like that they do start to embody, and you have to sort of get some feedback from them. Like sometimes it seems actory, but they'll be like, I don't think this character would quite do that, and you sort of do they're living this character.
You've got to be prepared to defend every decision
you
make.
You do.
Yeah, I also think that's one of the biggest sort of changes in my outlook as I've been doing this, is that when I started out as a writer, you would write a character, and then your hope in the casting process was, I want to find somebody who is exactly this. And people would come in and you go, oh, they're amazing, but they're not this exactly. And the smartest thing, I wasn't around for the pilot of Silicon Valley, but the smartest thing, Mike is a genius at casting. It's one of his true strengths. And he did an amazingly smart thing, which was he auditioned, I think every one of our principals auditioned for the role of Ehrlich. And he loved the way that they each kind of played it in a different way, and he was super smart about it, and he just thought, that guy's really funny, and that guy's really funny, and that guy's really interesting, and that guy's really interesting. I think this is my favorite version of Ehrlich, but I want those other people in this show. So he actually, if you go back to the original pilot script, the other four guys are very different on the page than they are now. They were each an interesting voice and an interesting note, and when he put those people together, they kind of worked as a group. So he kind of reverse engineered the characters in the script from that group of people.
When we were kids, I was the one getting good grades. I was the one who was planning for my future. I would bring gifts for my teachers because they worked so hard, cool stuff. He was always getting in trouble. He got caught smoking opium in the tool shed. He crashed my uncle's motorbike.
And do you think you're the cool one?
Yeah, it's different in Pakistan.
I've never been, but I know it isn't.
The tricky part, though, is because you want to be open during that casting process. It's so important to be able to say, well, God, it's not exactly who we had in mind, but they're so good. But at the same time, you can't lose the dynamic that could be the engine for the show, because suddenly you fall in love with someone. Well, it's not who I wanted, but I love this person, and they did so many good things that I loved before, and then you get them in the piece, and they don't have the right bite or and they're suddenly playing something that you're having to force the character and push the character because it's not there inherently in the actor, so it's very important to balance that the whole time. Like, I got to be open, but at the same time, I can't lose the big picture here, because those dynamics are what's going to drive the show in the long run.
Sure. So sometimes the least funny part of the process are the notes that come with what you're doing. What are the most recent ones, or the ones that come to mind that made your eyes roll?
From network and studio,
Yeah.
that kind of thing?
I gotta say, I'm in a situation now at HBO where I've never had anything like this. They've done such a ninjutsu thing on me where I just in my bones I have such a cringe whenever notes come up. The last couple years on Silicon Valley, they've flipped it on me where now I'm like, I want to show this to them. I want to know what they think. Maybe they have a good idea. They're so helpful. They're so unobtrusive. They're so smart.
Is that kind of scary, not having the constant, back and forth with the network?
Well, no, we have the back and forth, but it's in a very constructive, helpful way.
It must be alarming,
it's like oddly enough, they're the partners that every other network and studio has always claimed to be. We're your partners.
Right.
So we're gonna muck that up and you're gonna fix it. That's how partnerships
They're
work.
presented as opinions. I'm sure we're
Well,
having a
the
similar
way they give
experience.
notes also,
It's
like
I'm feeling this,
Yeah,
but
or-
and it's individuals. They don't necessarily collate all their notes into these bulleted things that you have to
exactly,
hit
and it's
6
and
out
it's
of
also
9.
I was confused by this. What am I going to say? No, you weren't?
I mean, I've been very lucky, even in my network time, of having pretty thoughtful and not the stereotypical kind of executives. But even a bad note or a note that's poorly articulated or that you don't understand, Tina and I always try to step back and treat that like an audience member. I say, what are they trying to say? And yeah, I could think of some. If I had a little longer, think of some ridiculous notes we've gotten, but it's still, there's something that they're reacting to. And I would miss it, I think, on some level, if that weren't there. And as we're in Netflix now, it's something we think about and talk about, because it is a different back and forth with them than it is with
Do you guys
the
get notes still?
It's been so minimal, I should say. It's been so minimal. And again, we were in an unusual situation where we had edited half the season for NBC.
Do they say things like, I think it would stream better if...
It's been very hands-off and very sort of big picture, thoughtful kind of stuff. And so I feel, and tell me if you feel this way as you have this slightly different experience, okay, do we need to now play that role of being, well, you always have to be your own worst critic.
That's what we did on our show, is we hired producers. So I hired somebody to be a consulting producer, and I treat them like the studio. And we have dates that they get stuff before the network. And so the good thing is we hired them, and they're people, so we can either take the notes or not, but we definitely want that process of vetting stuff. And we've learned something on Transparent that has been totally revelatory for me as a showrunner, which is we basically turn things in now to both of our producing department, that we call them, as well as the network, earlier than I would have in the past. And then we continue working. So I turn something in when it's like 75% ready.
Talking about scripts, outlines,
Everything,
et cetera?
all of it, outline, scripts, all of it. And then over the next few days, while they're waiting to read and you're waiting for your call, you as a room are fixing it, and it's getting better. And then you get the call, and you've already done it.
Yeah.
And then you pretend like you haven't.
Genius.
And you say, amazing. And if the note is good, you probably already thought of it. You can see that, it rises.
Yeah.
This scene isn't working. Everybody can feel it. The producers, the network, the room, and it's changed by the time you get the notes, but you don't tell them that you've already changed it. And it's a way of keeping everybody, feeling included, and it's a way of kind of vetting everybody's notes against each other.
You can get a little blinkered when you're in the room. It can become its own little bubble.
Yeah,
and
no, it's great to get outside feedback.
And writers look at things differently than audience members do. I really think we suffer from that quite a bit, where things get very writerly, and it's all about the construct of this, as opposed to what's the experience of someone with very fresh eyes, just letting it wash over them the way that an audience member does. Not, I wish we had gone the other way here. The way I wanted to go back in this way, because now I don't understand why he's doing this and whatever, which we all do.
I've definitely gotten into arguments with people who have enjoyed certain episodes, and I've tried to explain to them why
They shouldn't.
You're not right for enjoying that, because structurally the show wasn't
Right.
made.
Right.
It's not well built.
The whole back
people
end
never
just
notice
didn't
that
work.
stuff.
And your enjoyment is not correct.
My friend Annie Gordon, who's now a writer in our show, tells this great story about back in the Friends days. One of his friends was a writer on Friends, and he said, "Oh, I saw the episode last night, and it was so funny." And the guy said, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much that means to me, because we stayed up so late that week. I mean, we were there every night, and the way that the stories intertwined and the way that it came around on itself at the end, and what she was thinking in the beginning is what he started thinking by the end, and how those two lined up, and Andy's like, no, I thought the monkey was really fun. and it's sort of just, and you can see the person just go, but that was Andy's experience. I enjoyed it because the monkey was funny. And
Marcel was a great actor.
Kenya, you're sitting here as a first-year network show. Are you incredibly envious of these stories about the lack of notes?
You know, it's interesting because, the hardest thing for us is being a family show that comes on after a show's been on for so long and being so successful, because our biggest note that we'll get is, that's already been done. That's already been
complaining about Modern Family being your lead? Is that what I just heard?
But if that's the biggest note we have to do. But one of the little tricks that I use, I always go, well, culturally speaking, and they really don't want to argue.
Don't get better.
That's a real, and we had to realize very quickly, being a 6'3" black guy with a neck tattoo, they stopped wanting to do note rooms, and it started being all phone calls that were really quick. And someone took a picture of us getting notes, and we were like this. And I had to learn to change my demeanor. It wasn't like I was purposely doing it, but you're hearing someone who give you notes that you think are going to tear your story apart. And I'm sitting there with this to me, and it sort of changed a little bit as the show went on. And after it came on, when it was all in a vacuum, the notes were a lot more. But once there was a little bit of audience resonance and some call and repeat and feedback, I feel like they started to let us go, and we get very few notes. I think the biggest part of our notes come from S&P, them wanting us to make sure we can't. ABC's a very particular network, but in general we've been really, really lucky. This is all seemed since Upfronts crazy for me. It is. Stuff keeps happening and happening. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. But I do feel like the idea that it hasn't quite been done yet, our show, in terms of we have a lot of leeway that we get with that, and I think that helps.
I think my friends in the feature world, are dealing with much, much worse in terms of studio
second guessing.
Interventions.
Layers and layers.
Layers and layers.
Well, in movies, they have to get it all in before, because once you go shoot it, that's it. They don't have the chance to
make sure
get
it's
it all in
perfect.
again, right?
That's why movies are so good.
And it's 7 seasons worth of notes crammed into one development phase.
But it's also about a lot of people with a lot of time to get in there, and they want to change it. And I feel like it's a bit of an outdated idea, this whole terrible studio network
I
notes
agree.
and all that. I feel it just feels old-fashioned to me, and because it's not our experience either.
Do you guys still get notes?
We get after the table read, we'll talk for 3 minutes. Hey, this, and usually it's that didn't work. And I mean, we have a good relationship with them. We like them. They're nice people, and I just think you always treat the people whose job it is to work on your show with respect, and they'll treat you with respect, and it works out just fine. But don't take notes you don't agree with.
But I think it's interesting that we keep talking about notes, and there's like a negative connotation to it. Do you
Yeah.
get a lot of notes? Oh, we don't get that many notes. How many notes did you get? And that's what I'm saying is I've actually now come into a situation where I've come to view notes as a great thing. Because do they have any thoughts? Do they have any insight into how to make this better?
I agree.
It's amazing.
I agree. I always say we need an objective eye on this, or a fresh eye on this. We've been on this too long. I can't. So I look forward to getting that email back from the execs who cover our show on the cuts, because I can tell when they're effusive about something, or when they're just like, yeah, that was fine.
Well, I can also think of plenty of times you have a table read and it's like a B, and there aren't that many notes, and that's fine. They're being respectful or whatever, but also you probably could get away with just shooting pretty much that script, and that then so much of your job as a staff is to go and really do the critiquing and try to get it better. And sometimes you get that thing, oh, I'm surprised you rewrote it so much. Well, it's our job to be not happy.
I doubt
we're good at it.
I doubt anybody at this table relies on those people to tell them when it's ready.
Absolutely.
Right. So
Well, we had an interesting experience though, because this is our first show. We came from feature filmmaking, and HBO kind of had to break us in a little bit to TV world, because we kept closing these storylines. We were in feature mode where you set stuff up and you're already thinking, okay, this is how I'm gonna end all this stuff. And they were like, guys, don't end this, just open it. And we've been talking about it now. It's like it's an open universe. And they were incredibly helpful. They were very gentle about it, but ultimately it was really freeing. And it's like now I think back on like feature filmmaking, and I love the form. It's like how I came up. I still want to be the Coen brothers. But I
just want a brother.
It's
helpful. Happy. Yes,
you
we don't have to do anything good. Kind of good to hang out with.
And Jay, actually, this segues into our next question. You've infused a lot of your own personal experiences into the show, and I'm wondering, is there a moment that you have watched after it's been completed that you've just cringed that you that you decided to include, and what was this moment?
Well, I think they're all cringeworthy, like cringe comedy. None of the characters are dead on me, so I see myself weirdly, probably mostly in Michelle, the wife character. So all the people, everyone in our lives is fair game. They kind of know that their stories will come up in our shows. There's hardly anything that isn't. Honestly, everything is something from our lives and that has happened. It weirdly empowers me to do it. It is interesting to see something that you've done show up, and then people talk about it on Twitter and they judge it, but they also laugh, and then there's arguments about it. To see people arguing about how you operate in your life is a really interesting thing. It's a unique experience for sure. It's never like, oh, that obviously Jay did that or anything. So I never feel like I'm busted on anything necessarily, but it is interesting to reveal yourself. Mostly, I have to say, it's just very validating, because you release these things that are very scary and embarrassing, and if you're doing your job well, it's resonating with people. The best compliment is when I get feedback where people I feel like you had a tape recorder in my bedroom. This is verbatim. I'm like, oh God. Because at a certain point, it looked like maybe banal dialogue for a second there, but with all the subtext.
Which is very much like real life, by the way.
Yes, exactly.
Have the rest of you had those moments where something you wanted to infuse from your real life, you ended up seeing it and thought, oh geez, maybe I didn't want to share this after all?
We all, on Transparent, the kids, it's slightly based on my family, and my sister and I are both writers on the show, and people are constantly saying that the children are horrible human beings. And they're doing a lot of the same stuff that I do. So, it's hard to ignore that stuff.
My wife, the show's based on my family and my wife, and my wife pooped herself when she was having our first daughter. And this was my first time having a kid, and I was so embarrassed. I started apologizing to the doctors. I was like, oh my God. I was like, I'm so sorry, I'm sorry. And my wife literally was like, are you apologizing?
I just had a baby.
And I put it on the show. And
amazing.
We watched it as a family, on Wednesday, and I didn't tell her. And she just looked at me and said, are you fucking kidding me? Did you really do this? So that was one I probably should have given.
So now do you have to vet the storylines through her?
I'm a little bit more careful.
I think Steve has a story. I can see it.
No. What I'm thinking of is all the times where I'll pitch something that I think one of the characters will do, thinking that's what I would do. And then, half the people in the room are horrified, oh, he's such a jerk. I'd hate him if he did that. I'm like, oh, okay. Something else.
Did that earlier.
Comes back to that whole therapy thing in the writer's room.
Yeah, we do reveal too much.
We have people in the writer's room that get very proprietary about characters, too. They really want this, they're pulling the character their way. I think Michelle would do this. I think she would. She would do that.
How did your family react to the story? Were they?
Well, it's weird. When you write stuff and you think it's never going to get made, and then you almost dare the universe to make it before you tell the person it's about them. Because when you first start out, you start telling people, I've written a character and it's based on you. And then, it never comes on and you've wasted a conversation. And so...
you look delusional.
Yes. So... I did call my parent and say, I've written something, it's probably never gonna happen. I just wanted to let you guys know it's happening, but I doubt anything's ever gonna come of it. And also when I called my parent who transitioned, I said, I'm writing a show based on our family. And I think there's gonna be somebody based on you in it. I didn't say the show is called Transparent. It's about a parent who transitions. I just kind of
Never
to
got
the
that till
family.
just now.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't? It took Jeffrey Tambor like
Just got
till the
that.
middle.
Wait a minute, it's so weird because I just got Blackish. Okay, that's weird.
When people tell me this, I'm like, you thought it was a show called See-Through or
It's about being open. I thought it was. It's great.
Okay. It's such a bad name for a show if you don't get it. It's like the worst name for a show if you don't get it. So that's what I was worried about, because I didn't feel like it really worked in both ways. I only felt like it worked as transparent, but I'm glad it worked for you as see-through, the show. Yeah, so I sort of like, I just kind of like doled out pieces of information. It's about our family. Oh, there is a person in it who's trans. Oh, yeah. I've changed the name now to transparent, yeah. And for sure, at first, my parent was really nervous about what it would mean to have that kind of publicity. And over the past year, I think the way that the trans community has been evolving and the trans story in our culture has been evolving in the past year so strongly has made it feel like, you know what, it was the time and place for this show. And our family happens to have found itself at this moment as part of this movement, early days in this movement, and it's good for the world, it's good for the movement, and so the unwanted publicity. Actually, my parent is like, went from saying, I really can't imagine that the whole world would know my story, to like being at events in Chicago and taking pictures. Real life Mappa.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's funny, I sort of have the opposite experience, which is because a lot of the stuff I've worked on, Seinfeld and Curb, are very sort of observational, and everybody seems to have their Curb story.
Mm-hmm. Right.
A lot of I don't have a lot of the, oh, I shouldn't have put that in. I get a lot of the, it's not a Curb story, it's not going in, and I'm in a lot of places, when I was working on Curb, it was a lot of like, something would happen and everyone would go, oh, that's gonna end up on his TV show. And it didn't.
Yeah.
It just, the difference between something silly that happens in life and something that is honed.
It's very specific.
Yeah.
If your shows were to end tomorrow, what would you want the next phase of your career to look like?
Sleep.
Sleep. Fair?
That's my dream.
Yeah, I think take 6 months off and do this again. Is probably my answer. As
This
crazy.
this round table?
Yes. Maybe 9 months off. Yeah. And it would be maybe 40 minutes instead of an hour. No, I mean, this is, to me, maybe, when my daughter's grown and out of the house, I'll go do features. But for now, I get to live at home. I get to work with really interesting people. And I get to do, a show I'm proud of. And that's kind of...
Is feature still a dream? I mean, is that something, we sort of made a joke about it earlier, but TV is in this, having this moment.
If there were a next phase, I only wish I could figure out how to make it easier, part of which is the depth of caring about what you're doing and trying to make it as good as possible, and part of it is, why does lighting take so long? And can they come out of their trailers faster? And, between 30 Rock and Kimmy Schmidt and I, were very concentrated on, okay, how does maybe these documentary style shows wrap earlier? How does any of it? And maybe they do.
They do.
And we completely failed at doing that. So the next phase, but yeah, I agree with Alec that what could you rather do if you want to write for performance?
I agree. I love
and be
my
writing
job.
for TV or whatever.
What if you weren't in entertainment?
I'd like to be a women's studies professor.
You played one in your show, by the way.
Yeah, and that's my...
Very convincingly.
Wear a caftan without any underwear. And, pontificate in front of young people.
That's the dream.
There's a big need for that, actually.
I love being, this is going to sound the corniest thing, I love being a dad. Honestly, like my kids.
I feel horrible now. I also love being a mom.
We all love being parents.
I say that because I'm so not. I so don't, because of my job, I so don't get to be a dad. And I've been doing it for so long, you know what I'm saying, even when you're on staff. So I say that because I'm not the greatest dad. When I have time, I try to be, but I think that's one thing that whenever I get time to do, you can't replace it. I would try a new life, now that my kids are almost, leaving the house, but I would try a new life of really being more in my kids' life. Because I've been so out of it writing for so long.
But without them, you wouldn't have your show.
That's very true.
That's true.
It's the only reason they're there.
How about you, Steve? What's next for you?
Well, I think the ultimate goal is balance. Because again, chances are if you're at this table, you're working ridiculous hours, and you take it home with you, and you're thinking about it at night when you're lying in bed, and you wake up in the middle of the night, please don't think about that story. And then you start thinking about it, and suddenly you're sitting at your computer at 3 a.m. trying to figure out
Okay, you
the
can text
scene.
me because I'm doing
Yeah. So I think that's the goal. How can I do this job? I mean, going forward, I've been doing this a long time. Going forward, can I find a way to maybe be involved in a show, more big picture, and have to work a little bit less than I am? And I enjoy directing a lot, so that seems like a very nice amount of hours as well, as opposed to what we're doing now. So that's it. I think balance, just a little bit. It's such a feast and famine kind of a business that and you're so grateful to be able to do it. You don't want to complain, but it's the greatest job in the world. But while you're doing it, it's really hard.
But do you think balance is possible? Is there any way?
don't know.
I've just made peace with all of the terror
pace.
and all the stress and all the fear. I've just rationalized that it's good for the work, and the day that I'm not terrified about it, and the day that I'm not up at 3 a.m. going, how do we fix it? How do we fix it? The show goes to crap.
Well,
you
yeah.
know, and then you're just kind
I think
of.
Steve's trying to make it someone else's problem.
That's exactly.
I guess that's my question.
Try to say that in a nice way.
Right. So the answer is getting fired from your own show. Is really
That's the dream.
That's the dream. To become so unbearable that your methods become unsound and you get pushed out.
The saying that we've used is when the show can become your train set. So you can kind of come in, play with it for a few hours in the middle of the day, and then go home.
To your train set.
Yes.
It's an actual full-size
Everyone
train.
knows about your train set.
It's a golden train set.
And finally, somewhat in that same vein, if you had a temporary reprieve from your show and you could write for any other show currently on television, what would you like to write for him?
That's not fair to ask us.
I would write for Transparent.
That's cheating. Come on.
No, it's not.
Wait,
I would.
can we stipulate not for anyone else's show?
Yes, that's
That
true.
will
Yes,
make it
no one at
a
this
lot easier and
table.
a lot less
Yes.
uncomfortable. Because obviously, for everyone
Obviously.
else's show.
Yes, of course, obviously.
Present company excluded.
I mean, the sort of scariest and most fun things throughout my career, going from sketch to multi-camera to single camera, I think I'd try to go right for a drama, like, Better Call Saul or some of those guys who know how to do drama stories and learn something new. I think that'd be kind of fun to write an hour.
SNL has always been my dream job. I've came close a couple, but I've heard that the hours are horrible and all that, but it just seems like I grew up watching it.
I was at SNL.
That's always been my dream job.
I think the Kardashians.
There you go.
That's awesome.
I just want to hang out with the sisters.
I probably would go drama too. I would probably write for The Americans. The fact that they're doing high espionage and family drama at the same time is just a really fun
It's very
show.
similar to Togetherness.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Same thing.
Steve?
Archer looks like fun, but I think what I would, if we're talking about sort of like the thing you'd want to maybe learn more, and I admire many people at this table for this, is we tell very episodic stories, and while we might carry some threads through the season, I'm always impressed with those who have the ability to sit down and arc out a season with amazing twists and turns, let alone a series where they're doing that. Because ours is just these little ideas that we come and then we form them and move on to the next one. So I would love to work with somebody who is really good at that and get better at that.
What are your favorite dramas?
I don't know. What am I watching these days? This is terrible. I'm not hooked into it. Wait, I'm gonna remember the one that I'm watching
At
all the
3
time
in the
right
morning.
now. I know, it's really gonna hit me. Come back to me in 2 seconds.
Okay. Alec?
I mean, I have such a huge respect for The Simpsons and South Park. That I think those people are just, having been doing those shows as long as they are, I'm not at a point in my life where I can watch every episode every week, but every time I come back to those shows, I'm always just blown away by just the skill level. And The Simpsons is just an institution. So to write an episode of that and just feel like I had some involvement in that, iconic show, that would be cool.
Steve?
Still nothing.
Should we just start naming?
I have jet lag. What are some dramas?
Exactly. You're the guy Kimmy hates.
Yeah.
There were a lot of wonderful dramas on ABC. Scandal, How to Get Away with Murder.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones.
There are. Game of Thrones, yes. I don't watch a lot of dramas.
You're a busy
Hill
guy.
Street Blues.
By the way, that
Great.
was one of my favorite shows.
All right, we're going back in time. Fantasy Island.
That's right.
Almost as good as the Kardashians.
Yeah,
Almost.
exactly.
Well, thank you all. That's all we have time for today. We're very honored. We learned a lot. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
For having us.
Thank you.
Then we have to do that thing where we talk silently while the credits roll.
That's that awkward stuff where we were asking you for your favorite show.
That was our
Oh, good.
credits
If that's they're
filler.
rolling that
Yes.
right now.
Oh, good.
This is the
You're
thing
all
where
good.
The piano music is
Yeah.
going. And they're in
That
my
was
watch.
not a good show.